In today's production environment, interfacing with multiple external devices is one of the most important things a production switcher is called on to do. Regardless of the size of the switcher, it's not enough to just have triggers to start something playing. Simple VTR, advanced VDCP, and even device timeline controls are a standard feature on the 3000 and 6500 series. As a matter of fact, these switchers have the same device control system as our flagship 8000X. So let's go over here, and I'm going to call up one of our XD-Cam machines on one of the motorcycle we've been watching. And most of the device control is controlled from the trackball here. To get into there, we're going to hit the DEV or device button. Now that's going to take the trackball and put it into device control mode. Now when I do that, this little removable overlay template that comes with the switcher kind of comes into play. So you can see here that device 1, device 2, 3, and 4, frame memory clips, 5, 6, 7, 8, etc., are all available. Now all these assignments are done in the menu, and I'll touch on that in just a second. But right now, device 1 is selected. And if I look down here, I can see my transport controls. Rewind, play, fast forward. Let's hit play, and there it starts. I can rewind a bit, play again. I can fast forward a bit. I can even shuttle. And the shuttle is going to be just like the front of a Sony VTR. As much as you turn the outside knob on the trackball is how fast it's going to shuttle. Very cool. You can even jog. And again, it has that famous Sony response. I can go as slow or as fast as I want to with the jog. Now let's go up to the menu here real quick. I'm going to show you quickly how to set up the device control. That's under Engineering Setup. We're going to go to Panel, Device Interface, and there's two buttons here. One is Serial Port Assign. Now on the back of the switcher processor are 4 RS422 ports, and they're labeled Remote 1, 2, 3, and 4. And you can see those right here, Remote 1, 2, 3, and 4. And all we're doing here is telling it what protocol that we want to use on those. So you can see that on my system here, port 1 is set to VTR. That would be like BVW75 or equivalent. So VTR, 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 and the last one I have is VDCP, Video Disk Command Protocol, which is a clip player. But I can assign anything I want. So for instance, if I wanted number 2 to be PBus, which we fully support, the PBus 2 system, I would hit Device Type Set, and now I can send PBus commands in and out of that. I'm going to set this back here to VTR. The next thing I want to do is I want to go to the Device Assign menu. So I'm going to go to Device Assign, and basically what this is allowing me to do is route the port onto a device number on my trackball. So in this case, I have port number 1, called Remote 1, I've actually assigned to Device 1. So whenever I hit Device 1 on my trackball, that's the port that's going to get controlled. So in reality, what this really means is you don't have to be extra careful to wire the port in the exact location you want the device to appear on the trackball. So you can see here I did a little patching. Remote 2 is actually device 3 on my system, and Remote 3 is device 2. Remote 4 is special. That's the VDCP clip player, and it gets a special column called the file list, where to find out and ask it, hey, show me all the files that are on your system. So now that those are set up, let's go to the device menu. So we're going to hit DEV for device, and you see here I have 3 choices. GPI timeline, because we fully support being able to do relay closures on a timeline. PBus timeline, which I touched on earlier. That's a kind of a generic smart GPI that you can use with an external controller. What we're going to concentrate on here is DDR and VTR. So on the bottom I have 3 different categories. Queue up and play, which is what we're going to concentrate here. We have timeline, and we have the file list, which is for VDCP. So under queue up and play, what I'm going to do is I want to not only be able to cue this and play something, I want to actually have the switcher remember a specific time code. So let's find something interesting here on the motorcycle. Let's shuttle down right here. I think he turns his head to look at something right there. Let's jog to the point right before he starts to turn his head. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go into my effect register. I'm going to select device 1 as the region, and I'm going to go into an empty register. Now this is a whole lot like doing something on the DME or on the ME bank. In fact, it's the exact same procedure. I'm going to go to empty register by hitting dot. Dot tells the system to go find me the next empty register. And in fact, it found it. 1 is E for empty. I'm going to hit enter. Now up on my menu here, we're in device 1, keyframe 0 of 0. Now don't worry about keyframes yet. You don't have to build a timeline unless you want to. There's a much simpler method called queue up and play. So what we're going to do now is I've got my endpoint, and right here on the trackball, I'm going to hit this button called Start Timecode. As soon as I hit that, look what happened to the menu. It copied the timecode that I'm sitting at here. I can play this, maybe move it down a little bit, shuttle down a bit here, get it out of the way, and maybe stop it. And now, watch what happens when I go up and I recall effect 1 again. It instantly cues the disk to the exact timecode that I wanted. I can now even hit run and start to play it. I can hit rewind and run, rewind, run. Rewind will automatically cue it. So let's go ahead and go to another empty register. So we're going to hit number 2 and hit enter, and let's do another one. Let's go find an entirely new place, maybe way down here, something that's going to look completely different. Although I think this whole town looks the same. But all right, let's go here right when he starts to move, right there. We're going to mark that as another start time code. And watch this. When I go to number 1, it's going to take me back to the first one, and I can run it. As soon as I go to number 2, boom, it takes me right back to that one. Now there's one more thing I can do. I can set what's called a stop time code. By the way, did you notice when I was queuing that these lights lit up? Let me go back to number 1 and watch the trackball. The trackball is going to blink to tell me that the system is still queuing. When it's queued, it lights up in green, the queue and the stop light, to give me a visual indicator that it's ready for me to go, so I can run it. So now let me rewind this. I'm going to run this thing, and I want it to freeze after a certain point. So let's run it, and I'm going to put my finger on the stop time code, and right there, I'm going to tell it to stop. Now look what it did. I now have a start time code and a stop time code. If I rewind this and run it, watch what happens. It stops exactly where it told it to. Now this simple queue up and play is probably about 99% of what anyone's ever going to want to do. But you also have timeline capability. Let me show you how that works. So what's really happening here is the switcher has automatically created a mini timeline for you. Let me show you. If I go to the keyframe menu, you can actually see that device 1 has a single keyframe on it. But it did that for you automatically. You didn't have to think about it. But what if I wanted to do something more? Let's go to register 2, and let's go back to the device menu. You noticed here that I've got a start time code but no stop. That's fine, no problem. I'm going to go into my timeline menu. Now this is a little more complicated. It's telling me what port I'm on, my current time codes, etc., etc. And what I have here is when I hit run, it's triggering the first keyframe, and that first keyframe's action is start or play. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to insert another keyframe. Now this is going to be exactly like we did on the DME. Now we're going to go into the Edit Enable menu. Notice that my multifunction module all of a sudden came up with all my editing commands. So what we're going to do now is we're going to say what's going to happen on the next thing. Well, what we're going to do is I want it to queue up to something. So let's find a time code here and say I want it to do a start time code of 434400 and hit enter. Now I'm going to change my action to queue up, and I'm going to insert a keyframe. Now, if we look at my timeline, I now have 2 keyframes. So I'm going to hit rewind to make sure I'm at the beginning. I'm going to hit run and watch what happens. It's going to play, and 1 second later it queues down the road. Now maybe if I want this to go a little longer, I'm going to increase the duration of the keyframe. So I'm going to go into Edit Enable, I'm going to go to page 2 and say keyframe duration is 3 seconds. Hit enter. Get out of Edit Enable, rewind, and run. Now his motorcycle will go for 3 seconds and queue. Now imagine all the creative control you have with VTR timelines. Remember that there are 99 keyframes available on each timeline register. So something you might want to do is for, say, a replay effect. You could have the replay come on as one portion of the timeline, have the timeline pause, queue up to another clip, and then have it play for the replay out. Now let's talk about VDCP control. Okay, so for VDCP control, this is where we have my device number 4 over here. This one has a little something extra. Not only can it queue up by time code, but if I go to File List, and I'm going to refresh this button called File List Update just to make sure I have the latest clip of files. When you push this button, by the way, what it does, it just asks the server to resend over all the clip names so I have them all. So you can see on this server here I have 4 clips. All I have to do in this case is, there's no time code to worry about. All I have to do is select the clip and hit load. And there it is. And if I come over here now to device 4 on my trackball, I can hit play. And there's a 6500 wipe. And if I come down here, I load this one, and I have the 3000 wipe. And I think he put a couple of other things. There's the basketball game. Let's load one of those up, and we'll just go ahead and play that too. So let's put this in to some kind of a queue up and play also, so that we can call it up on the multifunction module rather than the menu. So let's go ahead and call up our 6500 wipe again. What we're going to do is we're going to go to an empty register. This time let's go to number 4. However, we got to be careful here. We're on device 4 now, not device 1, so we need to turn that off. And device 4 is under here, so we're going to select that. We're going to go to register 4, which is empty, hit enter. And we're going to load our clip to make sure it understands what we want. And it's important to do this. We still need to hit start time code so that it goes into the system. And if we go over to queue and play, you can see that we now have 0 as our start time. We can rewind, and we can run this. And there it goes. Let's go to number 5, go to another empty register, go to file list. Let's select the 3000 wipe, hit load. We're going to start time code, and now we can rewind and run that one. Let's do one more just for fun. We'll go to number 6, select the basketball game again, hit start time code, and now we can rewind and run this one as well. So now we can recall number 4, run it, recall number 5, run it, and recall number 6, and run it. Now that we've looked at all the device control capabilities, let's have a little fun. Let's combine macros, macro attachments, and device control so that we can trigger something while pressing a crosspoint button. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a new macro. We're going to go over here and we're going to say macro, and we're going to go into the exit mode, and we're going to go to an empty macro. So we're going to hit dot, which is going to be macro 11. We're going to hit enter, which is going to put us into record. We're going to come over here, and I'm going to say device 1, and we're going to hit play. Now notice that it automatically put one step in. Now at the moment, I don't really care what the device is queued up to, because all I want is the play command. So now we're going to hit store, enter. So macro 11 is always going to make device 1 play no matter what. So in fact, let me hit stop here, put up device 1, and let's go to direct mode, and we'll change the bank to 1. Here's macro 11. As soon as we hit it, the motorcycle starts. Now there's nothing else happening, just that. Let's go to another macro. Let's go over here to macro, go into the exit mode. Let's go to macro 12, hit enter. And this time, what we're going to do is we're going to go to device 2, which is another one of my decks. We're going to hit play. And now we're going to hit store, enter. Let's do one more using our VDCP clip player. So I'm going to go into here, and I want to go to macro 13. So I'm going to hit dot, enter, puts me into the record mode. Now this time what I want it to do is I'm not going to call up or do anything with the device directly. We've already made a register under a keyframe effect that tells it to call a clip up. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to the effect, we're going to turn off device 1, go to more and select device 4, exit out of that, and remember we had it on number 4. So I'm going to hit 4 and enter. So if we go back to the macro, we can see that we now have one step. Now before I say I want it to play it, we always have to have a little bit of a pause when we call up a clip server, because they can take a couple of frames to call up and get ready to play. So I'm going to come over here and hit pause, and I think 10 frames will be perfect. So we're going to hit 10. Then lastly, I'm going to come to my trackball, I'm going to hit device 4 and play. So I've got 3 steps. We're going to hit store, enter, go back to direct mode, and let's watch. So let's hit all stop for everything. We're going to look at device 1 here, XDCam 1 on my multi-viewer, hit macro 11, it plays. Macro 12, it plays. And down here on DDR, we recall it and it plays. Now I'm going to take these 3 macros and attach them to crosspoint buttons. So the whole point of this is when I press the button, it automatically plays the device. Now let's recall macro 11 again, because in order to attach something, you have to have recalled it. So we've recalled it. We're going to come over here and do either pre-macro or post-macro. Now in this case, I want the macro to run first. So I'm going to hit pre-macro. I'm going to come over here and put it right on the XDCam button here. So you can see it blinking. Let's go over here and hit 12. I'm going to hit the pre-macro, and I'm going to hit XDCam 2 so it rolls the second deck. And on 13, which is the one where it actually calls something up, now remember, this one actually takes 10 frames. It's really important to use pre-macro to put it on the DDR because I don't want it to take the DDR until it's ready to roll. So let's take a look at our stuff. Let's all stop again so we can watch what we're doing. We're going to make sure that macro attach enable is turned on. And here we go. Let me put black on the line. We're going to hit XDCAM 1. Boom, it rolls. XDCAM 2. Boom, it rolls. And DDR, wait, boom, it rolls. Now, just as I mentioned earlier, the device control features that are available on the 3000 and 6500 series are identical to our flagship 8000X.